I do try to lead by example. And what I say is, I'm in the field. Like you travel so much. I'm sorry, and you can't manage from behind a desk.
And I love that phrase. You always said that too, which is I cannot manage from behind a desk, especially in sales. And I'm like, that's perfect. That's perfect. You should be out in the field.
Right. So I want to be hearing not only what, our team is saying and doing, but I also want to be with those customers and see what they're seeing, hearing, and doing, because that's your first indicator of what's going on in the marketplace.
Welcome to the LiveWire podcast, powered by Family. Join us as we explore the untold stories behind America's electrical infrastructure, sparking conversations about life, safety, business, and innovation. Brought to you by OEL.
LiveWire podcast. Michael Dresser, National Sales Director for OEL. Let's start with who Michael Dresser is. Where do you live? Where'd you go to school?
Sure. So pretty easy to start there, right? Born and raised in Ohio. Never really moved out of Ohio, so I moved around Ohio though. So born and raised in a small town called Sandusky, Ohio, up on Lake Erie. Obviously attended high school there. Then headed to OSU, and we're at Ohio State University, go Bucks, where 4-year degree in business administration. And then stayed in Columbus for a little while, worked for the Speaker of the House there in Ohio, but transferred back up to Sandusky, where the nucleus of my family was, had kids, raised the kids, they're gone. Now I'm back in Columbus, Ohio. So pretty simple synopsis of just running back and forth, about 2 hours from the lake.
Cool. So what'd you do when you said you did business admin at Ohio State?
Yeah, business administration, yep.
Okay. And then you played sports too.
So yeah, I was blessed to have a good, very nice athletic career. It transferred into college. I eventually played rugby for 4 years at Ohio State. We were very fortunate to have a lot of really talented people come in all at the same time. And we made 2 national title runs. Unfortunately, we fell short and lost both years. But my junior and senior year, we played for the national title.
Who'd you play in those national title games?
So my
because rugby is kind of this club sport still, right?
It is, okay. But the movement in the United States now with rugby is it's become way more than a club sport. At Ohio State, it still is a club sport, but a lot of places have grasped onto rugby, and now there's tons of scholarships. In some places, it's a varsity sport now.
So it was a club sport. Well, it still is, but was it a scholarship sport when you were at Ohio State?
There were three universities that gave scholarships back when I played, which was Life Chiropractic, Palmer Chiropractic, and then Cal State, University of Cal, so Cal Berkeley. Okay. Those 3 were the only 3 that gave scholarships back then. So the rest of us were playing as a club.
Okay, cool. And then did you swim? You swam at Ohio State though too, right?
It was so brief. It's almost not even worth mentioning. But yeah, for a itty bitty period of time. And then that was just too much.
And then you played golf too.
I did not play golf at Ohio State.
Okay.
No. I played golf. I didn't play golf for Ohio State.
Okay.
I was not that good at all. They were that back then. They were a really good team.
Okay. So then, what was your first job out of college?
First job out of college was actually with a company called BFI, or Browning Ferris Industries, which was in the refuge business. So came in to help them establish, back then, that was 1991, where recycling was just taking off in the United States. So went in to help them, at least in Northern Ohio, look at establishing, commodities, basically, paper, glass, plastics that we were collecting. And we didn't really have, paper was already a given commodity in the marketplace, but plastics and glass, that was all new. So worked with them for about 1.5 years, and then went to work for an organics company called Barnes Organics. And that's really where I started to dabble into the environmental side of things.
Okay. So that's where you kind of cut your teeth on like the EHS world and stuff like that.
Most definitely. Yeah. Okay. To the Barnes family credit, they saw a need, number one, to collect and figure out a way to recycle organics. And then number 2, they really saw, with the help of Ohio State University, again, in the horticulture and agricultural side, what do we do with the stuff that we're producing? And then we just found that the microorganisms that were being developed within nature, with what we were doing, was beneficial to certain things like bioremediation, cleaning contaminated water. There's just a whole slew of things that these microorganisms could do. And Barnes Nursery, owned by the Barnes family, was one that just said, "Yep, we're going to help, and we're going to do a lot to keep investing in that cause. So yes, I was involved with a lot of really, at that time, far out experiments where we were composting food wastes, which were unheard of back then. Now it's sort of standard.
Yeah, for sure. So then how did you end up in the political realm?
So my family had ties with our local state rep, which was Fred Deering. God rest his soul, great guy. I had heard that he was looking for a new page, and I was at Ohio State at the time. So
Okay, so this was when you were at Ohio State.
it was.
Okay, gotcha.
Because I was right there.
So before you went to Barnes.
That's correct.
Got it. Okay. I was making sure.
So this would have been I think my sophomore year. So I was there my sophomore, junior, senior year, and then stuck around, got promoted up to the speaker's office, and worked for the Speaker of the House in Ohio, which was Vern Rife at the time. And then I worked for Vern for probably a year and a half before I decided to go back to Sandusky.
Okay, gotcha. So when did you kind of officially end up in more of like the industrial distribution world? Because I know you worked for Rexel, I know you worked for a bunch of different companies and different layers from manufacturing to distribution. How did you kind of make that leap now then from Barnes over to the next chapter?
Sure.
Because I met you when you were at Guardian Gloves, and
Correct.
That's where we started our relationship. You were our account manager for OEL when we were just starting. Well, not just starting. We weren't manufacturing our own gloves yet. So, what's the timeline from Barnes to that Guardian position?
So Barnes up to Guardian, and there was a couple of steps in between. I did some IT work with a bank, but really where my industrial side of things came is I went to work for a company called GME Industries out of Detroit, Michigan, and they did blast cleaning abrasives, and they manufactured them, but they also recycled them. So they're very unique in that business where they're recycling industrial abrasives. And that's sort of where I really started to dive back in after leaving Barnes. There was probably a gap of maybe 5 to 10 years. But then I sort of stuck into that industrial sector for a while, and then after about, I think I was with GMA for about 7 years, and really did a lot with the industrial side. It wasn't too long after that friends of mine owned a company called Burrell and Apple, which was an electrical distribution company, and they thought it would be a great transition for me to come and actually run their sales force, and then that's how I got into the electrical side.
Okay, and that's where like the kind of the sales. Is that where the salesmanship really kind of started there? Was once you got to that position, you were like, okay, now I got to start really building my understanding and knowledge base around building sales forces and different things like that?
So I truly believe that you are developed over time by the people you are around and are influenced by. Mm-hmm. So I think I could actually say my salesmanship started with my stepdad, Glenn Decker. So Glenn, we owned a real estate agency. I mean, I was a high school kid. I was just the typical high school kid, right? I knew everything. He didn't know nothing. But he continuously rubbed off on me over years. After that, Bob Barnes, who owned Barnes Nursery, was another great mentor in my life. I go up then to Scott Armbrecht, who was my IT guy at Ohio Savings Bank, to Carl Stevens, who owned GMA. Each one of these individuals had an influence on how I developed mentally, matured. They showed me things mostly by action more than written document or a policy. Right. Or
here's your outline that you need to follow of how this job works. It's like in the field, being in front of people, customers, interactions and stuff. So you're cataloging all that information as you're going.
Yes, but what they all had in common was the human element. That each one of them had a different way of dealing with people. But they all had a human element that's really what I've carried along with me is it's business, but we're still dealing at the core with people. And I've tried to have that be somewhat central to the way I operate.
So when you're looking at recruiting somebody for a sales force or something like that, what are the tangibles that you're looking for in somebody?
Well, obviously, first and foremost, I want to see how they react just personally. Like are they personable? From that, I want to see is there some intelligence there? And then thirdly, I just want to see. I really truly want to see. I said personable, but I do want to see how they view the world in going out and talking to people. If they're skittish about walking through a door, which in the B2B world, that's what we do, right? We have to walk in the door and convince people to buy from us. If I can sense that they're going to be skittish about getting in front of a customer, somebody they've never met before, and they're not going to handle that situation well, I'm not sure that this is what they're going to be cut out for. So I just look for that. I really look for the personal element. It's sometimes left on the table, but I would also say where's their faith in all of that too? I just think that, a Christian faith person, can have a really good one. So will all the other religions. I just don't know them like I know Christianity. So,
so that becomes kind of it's not a deciding factor, but it's something you're definitely looking for.
I definitely want to see a commonality there.
And that's almost like cultural alignment in a lot of ways, right?
I would say that's a very good way to put it. Yes.
Okay. So then when you're like, what are some of you travel a ton, and this is one of those things that I'm always kind of in awe in, because I like to think of myself as a pretty disciplined person, and when I am on the road, I've got my very set routines and stuff. When you're starting to develop a younger person in a sales position, there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. There's also really high expectations that come with that too. How do you help establish some of those disciplines for, let's just say, a new salesperson or something that you're like, hey, I really like this guy. He fits culturally. He checks all these boxes and stuff, but maybe he's never had a sales job before. What are some of the things that you're sort of that you're wanting to embed in there early with them?
Sure. So one of the things that I remember when I started working from home, which was quite frankly a long time ago, like you said, I've predominantly been a home office guy with getting on a plane and going in and living out of hotels. One of the things and I don't recall who told me this, but one of the things that I said right away was, you've got to get yourself in a routine at the very beginning of the day. Mm-hmm. For what I did for myself was, I said, I get up, I still put on my khaki pants, I still put on my button-down shirt, and I get to my office and my house as fast as I can. Well, not fast as I can, but I get to my house in a reasonable time frame for me, and I get to start working. Mm-hmm. So I've always tried to impress on people: don't show up in a t-shirt and your pajama pants,
because then you'll act like that.
That's correct.
You're going to act like you're in your pajamas all day, and you're never really going to lock in the way that you should.
Right. Like you're going to an office. This is your work time. So I've always just tried to press upon whatever your routine needs to be, make it your routine. Whether you're at home or whether you're on the road, it's still the same routine. So get yourself into a routine. That helps with the mindset. Some people love to get up and work out in the morning. I am not a morning workout person. My wife would tell you that. But I've tried to at least say, let's get on the treadmill and at least do some steps, something just to get yourself going maybe. And it just depends on each person. But younger people need to get themselves into a routine. They need to establish whatever that is for them. And if they need the help of how do I craft a routine? I don't even know what to do. Well, then we would sit down and talk about it. But that's
a willing participant, though, will ask that question. Help me establish this routine, right?
Well, and yes, most of the time, yes. And then if they're not able to establish that routine for themselves, certain things just start to happen. It's sort of like a domino effect. And then, as I say all the time, numbers don't lie. So then all of a sudden, if the numbers aren't generating, and that's what we are in sales, we're generating dollars, we're generating revenue. So, or we're generating leads, or so on and so forth. So yes, if you just don't see the numbers, it's, the first question I'm going to ask somebody is, what's your routine look like?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's I feel like there's this, I think it's starting to recede a little bit, but I do feel like, for the last 10 years, it's been this massive sell point to the new workforce as they've graduated college or maybe gone straight into the workforce from high school, that work from home, mm-hmm. right? This is this big hallmark of a generation. And I feel like, and I'm curious what your opinion is, that, and I think we've seen it in more high profile companies, is that they're starting to pull that back. They're not seeing the productivity that they would want to see from people that work from home. However, that's not to say that people can't be highly productive working from home. Obviously, sales is one of those things where it's you're generally speaking, you're geographically placed, especially if you're going to be a B2B role, you're going to be geographically placed in a region that you're going to be working in. So when you are when you're, let's just say, an early 20-year-old and stuff, so it's about establishing that routine right away, right? It's like whatever it is that you're going to do and whatever your clock in, clock out hours are, you've got to still maintain those true, because obviously sales guys, it's like there's a different animal there. There's a social component of it. Sometimes you're out at night. You can be really on your phone or your email 24/7 because working, especially in the trade world, never really sleeps ultimately.
Yep.
So then how do you start structuring some of that balance in there? Because it can overrun you then too, even with a routine.
So a couple different things there. One is when we talk about a new person in the business, right? I want them to establish that routine. Now, going down, your point is exactly correct. We're on these things 24/7, or we've got, these little, small micro books or whatever that we're working off of as laptops. Yes, we could be answering calls, we could be going out to dinner. So, but in the onset, you have to establish that routine so that you can set yourself up for success later. Now, down the road, if I have that person is now seasoned, we've got 3 to 5 years in, and they're like, I was out late last night, and I really didn't get to the office till like 9 that next morning because I was out with clients or whatever. I'm like, perfectly fine. But you have to get yourself into those types of routines. So when I, like I said, when you look at those younger folks, those are the types of things I look for to get them going early on. But you had said something else earlier in that long question. So can you go back and tell me which one?
I can't remember what I even said. I think it was something around like establishing routine and stuff, new people.
I'm sorry. Now I remember. It was regarding the newer generation coming into sales and what does that look like? So and companies pulling people back in now. So the other thing about the human side of it is not everybody does well on an island. And that's what a home office is. It's an island. Some people need that interaction with others. I think most salespeople, quite frankly, sort of do. So I think that's why you see the Panera Breads or the Starbucks. They're not really socializing in there. It's just, hey, I see people, I'm around people, but there's people in there working and stuff. Perfectly fine way to do it as well. You might just need that human interaction. I know certain folks on our team will be like, yeah, I just went into the Panera and worked, and well, here came so and so, and I got to say hello to them, and so that community aspect can sometimes play a role. I've been able to do both. I've been blessed to say, well, if I need to be in my office to concentrate, which does happen, I'm in my office to concentrate. But when I need that human interaction, go out and, like I said, go to the Panera or go to someplace that there's just people buzzing around so that you have that feeling. But right now, companies pulling people back in, there's a twofold approach to that, right? They have a lot of real estate that they need to occupy, so they're pushing them that way versus just, well, what's good for the person, because if a person is happy, they're going to be successful. That doesn't mean that you just give them carte blanche. It's like our children. Our children would be happy if we quite frankly left them alone too, to go do whatever and eat chocolate all day long. But you have to have boundaries and rules and some rules and some boundaries. But I try to keep them as potentially loose as I can. But there are still things that you want to see. And again, we are numbers driven. So that proof's in the pudding. 2 and 2 is still 4, as far as I remember.
Yep.
So.
Yep. Well, maybe.
No, 2 and 2 is still 4.
I agree with you. Sorry for interrupting you, but if you can subscribe, and reshare this podcast to someone it'd really mean a lot to us. All right, let's get back to the episode. Now we fast forward up to a little bit of where we're at today. So you've been with us for, is it 2 years?
2.5.
2.5 years. Like, full disclaimer, we didn't really have a sales force, right? We had Forrest, we had Josh and I, and we were kind of running around the country with our chickens with our heads cut off, just trying to build a brand, build a really strong network. And I think we had built a pretty good kind of initial thought process or of a brand, like, okay, here's what they are, here's who they are and stuff. But we were missing that go-getter piece of it, right? Where you're going to go out and get that business. You're going to go build that relationship in the field with them and stuff. And you came in and really kind of started laying out that framework. And now at this point, I mean, you're I'd say you've done a pretty good job in conceptualizing it and now putting it into practice. What was that? Did you feel like a risk when you decided to do that? Because we're a family business, right? And like you're coming from some of these larger corporations and stuff with a lot more structure and things like that. How does someone like you go through a process of determining if that's something that you maybe want to take on as a project in a lot of ways?
No, yeah, sure.
Like, what are the qualifiers for you when we were meeting?
So I think Josh would tell you, right? It was. I would always just sort of, whenever I run into him, I would always be like, "Hey, you ever looking for somebody? Let me know."
Sure.
Because I could see where you guys were going, and I could see what you were trying to build. Obviously, I didn't know the inner workings until I got there, but on the surface, it was like, no, that's a great brand. That the way you looked at it from an OEL perspective was you were specializing basically in that 70E category. You weren't over here and a little bit of dabbling over here. That you guys were really focused. So I knew you had something. I didn't know what it was quite yet. So yes, to look at it and go, right, do I want to step out from where I'm at and take on a growth thing? Well, quite frankly, that's what I've done my entire career. I think I'm pretty good at it. So yes, looking at it, I'm like the pieces parts are there. I do think you needed somebody to come in and be a closer, be somebody who says, okay.
And organize it too, frankly.
Right. And here's where we're going to go attack, and here's how we're going to attack it. And then, like you said, you and Josh are just running around like crazy. I couldn't find out when you guys would even close a deal. Like when did you actually have that discussion with the customer? Because you were on to the next thing, because you had to be.
Right.
So it was just like, okay, let's rein it in. And even on my drive over here, I was thinking about just how I wanted to approach the team on conferences. Like, okay, because that is what we do, right? We just finished NSC, we just finished a conference. We're on to the next thing. We're going to the next meeting. We're scheduling our next trip. Well, we need to finalize what the conference is. We need to finalize those reach outs. We need to finalize who are our top people in our geographic region. I don't know if we do that. So I think I want to lay a little bit of groundwork around that. Same thing with OEL. When I was looking at you guys, it was like, man, you guys could really do some damage. And then I think right away, I know you were working on some of the marketing materials and some of the rebranding and stuff. And I was just like, yeah, this is extremely powerful. And I think if we just can boost it up from underneath with the sales side of it, this is just going to be a rocket ship.
Yeah, it always felt like we had a really good product. Felt like we had kind of like a great motor, but we needed a driver, right? It was like it's interesting when you watch any of these, Ford versus Ferrari movie types of things and stuff. There's so much emphasis on, yes, we built the car, but who's going to get on the track and actually drive this thing and push it to where it can go? And I think I think from an ego standpoint, you always think like, oh, it'll be me. But then you realize really quickly that no, like getting people into roles and knowing what those roles are is incredibly important, and compartmentalizing and departmentalizing things is essential to it. And I think what I've watched is I'm good at putting the paint on the car and polishing it and making it really pretty and selling you that car in that image. I think Josh is really good at building the culture around the designing and what's going to really, make the thing turn ultimately. But you still got to put somebody in that driver's seat that's going to say, here's where we're going and here's how we're going to do it and here's how I'm going to get there. And then, on top of it, just to use that analogy, it's like, can you corner it? Can you turn it? Can you do all these other sort of pieces of making that thing work? And I think you've done a brilliant job of that. So when it comes to what are some of the check boxes that you're looking for when you're looking to put, and I'm going to stay on the car analogy, is I look at it as like we're putting a car in each one of these regions, right? Who's going to be the driver of that car, right? Corporate is going to create the vehicle and stuff for this thing to be successful, hopefully. But then now, Mr. Sales Director, you need to go pick your drivers for each one of these regions to go push that car out into the market. So what are some of the early, we talked about culture alignment and stuff like that, but are there any like real specific check boxes that you're looking for that you go, that, and that are my 1, 2, 3 things? I know with Josh, his is always the 3 H's, right? It's humble, honest, and hungry. For me, it's the 2 A's. I want aptitude and attitude. Like if I can have those 2 things, I can work with you. Do you have anything like that you sort of work out of?
I don't. I don't know if I have. You guys are real good at those 1, 2. I do work in odd numbers, so it's usually a 3s or 5s. But what I would say is I would back dovetail some of that. I do look for hungry. I mean, if you're not hungry in sales, you need to go find something else, because you should want to be closing deals. Like, that is it. You should want to be looking at your numbers, and you should just be like, I'm off this week, or I'm off this month, or whatever. I think the other thing too is again, I probably overused the terminology, but I really do look for human. Like, are you connected with your customer base? Like, are you connected? That's why I think one of the things I say, and again, I do try to lead by example. And what I say is, I'm in the field. Like, you travel so much. I'm sorry, and you can't manage from behind a desk.
And I love that phrase. You always said that too, which is, I cannot manage from behind a desk, especially in sales. And I'm like, that's perfect. That's perfect. You should be out in the field.
Right. So I want to be hearing not only what, our team is saying and doing, but I also want to be with those customers and see what they're seeing, hearing, and doing, because that's your first indicator of what's going on in the marketplace, right? Is being out in the field and listening to them and getting feedback from them on where their business is and how are we integrating. But when you get back to the person, I definitely want to see them hungry from the next sale. Finish what you started, but then get on to the next one. I want to see them, be connected to their customers, in a real deep way. And I think the phrase I usually use is, I want you to own that customer, right? I think in the marketing world, you hear stickiness is another thing that you hear quite a bit. But those are my top two, and then there's a lot of subcategories that come off of those. But yeah, I want to see you be hungry for it and get after it. I think maybe one of the other words I would use is discipline. I think you have to have that. If you are on the road and you are, working out of hotels, and some people have young families, all that balance. And so you have to be disciplined. So those are probably the three things I would say I'm looking for. I want discipline. I want, a get after attitude, but I want them to also have that human effect so that they can get to know their customers.
Yeah. What's your, when you're on the road, what's your kind of little signature thing that you personally like to do? Michael Dresser's thing when he's on the road. I know for some people it's like, I got to go run, right? For me, it's a creature of comfort type of a thing. It's just the one thing that I like to do, and it's easy, is I like to go find a bowl of pho wherever I go. Whatever city I'm in, I'm like, I want to go find the best bowl of pho that I can get, because it's cheap. It's easy for me to do. It makes me feel I don't know why, it just makes me feel comforted. I'm good with a nice warm bowl of soup, even if it's in the middle of summer in freaking Houston. I just want to go find that. It's my little journey adventure piece that I get to personally have when I'm on the road. Do you have anything like that you like to do?
This will sound, probably will sound odd. It depends on where I'm at in the world. So if I'm an East Coast, I live on the East Coast. So it's easy for me to travel west, right? So I am always up early, whether I'm on the East Coast, and early's relative. My brother-in-law gets up at 4:30. I think he's nuts to do that, but he just wakes up and that's his day. Somewhere between, that 5:30, 6 o'clock time frame, I'm trying to get up. But when I'm on the road, my thing is I want to get after emails immediately in the morning. That gives me a sense of accomplishment for me. It also means I know I'm good until I get back, because who knows when I'm getting back to the hotel room. Right. So I definitely, and so the prior day's emails get answered in the morning. It's sometimes rough for me. Now, if there's a pressing issue, somebody's blowing up my phone, the minute I'll get back to the hotel, I'm going to try to get that answered for them, or maybe I'm texting or shuttling something off to the office to say, let's get that done. But then my back end is I try to get an afternoon workout. Now, these conferences are
nightmares.
They're nightmares, because you go from the conference to a dinner, and then you're just, for me,
you may or may not see the sunlight that day or that several days in a row.
It's killer, right? Mm-hmm. It truly is killer. And a lot of people think that these are, super glamorous and, these are, great because all you're doing is entertaining, and that's just so much fun. But it actually is very taxing, right? Because it's, there's some jovialness. There's some, like I say, there's that discussion of hey, totally. How's the kids? What's going on with your life? Blah, blah, blah. But then there's also let's talk business, right? So your brain is constantly on. Mm-hmm. And so for me.
And it's toggling all over the place.
Yes. So for me, I take it in two different phrases, right? It's when I'm out seeing customers, I can usually schedule my time where I get that morning and I can get that afternoon in. When I'm at a conference, it really is getting up, getting stuff done. And then when I get back to the room at 9, 10, 11 o'clock, it's just a breath, and it's just go to bed.
Mm-hmm. So this is one of the hardest things that I've had to do, and I've gotten better on it, and it does speak to the discipline part of it, which is when I'm on the road, I'm already trying to I'm trying to be present in everything I'm doing, but as I'm getting towards the end of a trip, I really start thinking about like, okay, how am I going to show up back at home now, right? And that's like, okay, I've got a little one at home. I've got my wife. I've got my responsibilities. Has the yard been cut? Like has whatever the responsibilities and chores are. Do you go through a series of kind of like almost like mentally preparing? And I think that does speak to the discipline part. And that's what I really kind of am like wanting to anchor down on here is that when you come home, your home life has to be balanced too. You have to have it like, you got to be able to come into that thing. So what do you do? Do you do any type of like preparation before you get home and stuff just to make sure that you're like totally locked in at home too? Because they're missing you for the next, whatever it is, 2, 3, 4 days potentially. And you don't want to miss that, right?
Yep.
That's almost, in my opinion, I would say that's more important than even what the business stuff is going. Because if that gets off kilter at any point, that will affect everything else around you.
So great point or great questioning there. Because again,
we don't talk about that.
We really don't because we're business.
Right. We're talking business.
Well, don't bring that in here. This is business.
Right. Give me I want numbers and I want transaction. I want ROI on money spent. Right. And I get that. That's all fine. But that human aspect, your home life is critical to that all success. And I don't want it to be that for that. But at the same time, it's like that is part of it.
No. Well, we get back to again, we're all human beings. We all have something outside of work, but work is certainly very central to what we do. I look at it too as this. The other thing, going back to what we were talking about with OEL, for me too, I loved the family aspect of it. Yeah, I've worked for a couple of different family businesses, and the good culture, right leadership at these family businesses make everybody along the way feel like family. And at OEL, I say, make me feel like family. No. I really feel like it is a family. And I like that a ton. But what happens? Well, when I left this time, Noelle's like, you're going to be gone for how long? Mm-hmm. When are you coming home? Mm-hmm. And so some of that preparation is done on the plane. To be honest with you, it's like, okay, let's take, business Mike out of the equation here and let's go back into, now I'm an empty nester, right? All of our kids are grown and gone. So it's just the two of us and the 2 dogs. But, I really do try to make sure when I'm on the road, I'm talking and, communicating with my spouse as much as possible. Sometimes I can't, I'm just toast. I just don't have the bandwidth, but a lot of times you got to keep that interconnection even when you're on the road. And then the other thing too, is when I get home, I still date my wife. Like I don't take that lightly. So, we have a date night. Sometimes it gets moved around a little bit during the week, but, traditionally it's on Friday night, and that's the time when it's just the 2 of us. We don't invite friends. We don't invite family. It's just us. And that usually I'm coming home, Thursdays or Fridays. So that's that reconnection, point, like, well, where are we at? What's going on? That's really what tries to keep me grounded as much as possible for the home life. And then, then it's family too. So then it's, more family, the more family I have around me, the better. Unfortunately for my central core of my side of the family is a couple hours away. So it's sort of a surrogate family kind of thing. But at the end of the day, I try to decompress on the plane. It's not that much of a drive from my house to the airport. And so then when I get home, it's like, okay, let's the 2 of us, what are we doing? Hey, we're going out to dinner. And that's usually our thing is, we'll go out to dinner and we'll have a good conversation and try to catch back up to, okay, where are we going tomorrow? What's the next day? So,
yeah, I start looking at, if I'm flying somewhere, I start looking at, and I notice I do this now every single trip, which is I start looking at photos of my wife, my daughter, and I'm like, and I start getting like really like, I start really just personally reconnecting back to that because I know the second I get home, I want to see them. Like I want to be around them. I want to have that just intimate connection with them again. But it's hard to do that when obviously, yeah, you're on the road in the middle of your trip, in the throes of things. And you said staying just constantly interconnected through that process. And that's something that before we had our daughter, it was kind of nice. My wife she would give me like a 24-hour kind of window when I got home. She was like, I know for the next 24 hours, you're just going to be like you're going to be decompressing. You're going to be trying to get caught up on things. You're going to be trying to get things organized and stuff. So I'm not going to try to ask anything of you and stuff. Those days are gone. So
here you go.
Yeah, those days are fully gone now. So now I'm like, okay, but it makes me, it's forced me now to up my discipline on the road, where I'm like, I'm not coming in hungover. I'm not coming in. I will be tired, but I've got to reserve some of it. And so, yeah, it's like, hey, you want to, we do the obligatory corporate dinner or whatever that is and stuff like that. And it's like, I'm done. Like, I'm going back to my room. I don't care if it's 6:30 or if it's 8:30 at night and stuff, but like about 8:30, I'm like, my night is officially over, and I'm coming home. And my wife used to get on to me for this because, and I still do it. This week at NSC, I did it. I was like, hey, I'll be home at 7:30. I think I got home at 9:30, 10. And it's like, and I haven't learned it. I'm aware of it, is setting those false expectations constantly. And
don't do that.
I'm the worst. Well, and I think sales guys, I don't know if you're like this, but I am, is like, I'm overly ambitious with how I can manage time.
Yes.
And I think in any sales environment, you almost can't do that.
Time's not yours.
Time is not yours.
Nope.
Exactly. That's a great phrase. And I don't think, I think for a long time, I always thought I owned my own time. In sales, you really don't.
You do not.
No, whatever the scenario is, I don't want to say stuck, but like if you're in a potential sales opportunity or you're in a relationship building scenario with a customer or something like that, you just got to let those chips kind of fly where they may. So how do you prep that? If you say to your wife, you go, hey, I should be back by 9 o'clock. I'll call you. Do you read that writing on the wall by about 8:15? You're like, I need to step out and send a text real quick and be like, I won't be calling you for another 2 hours. Or do you just kind of wait for the bomb to go off and you like,
so, this is a tough one. Because in my household, my wife likes rigid timeframes.
Mine does too.
Okay. So, and
it keeps an orderly home. So I love that about him.
Well, I don't have the same home you have, right? So mine is a little different. I guess if I look at the children's side of things, I'd say my dogs, right? So there's the walks, it's the baths, it's the going to the vet, okay, that kind of stuff. So we do have that still a little bit. But what I have learned is that you do have to set some sort of precedent with it. It's like, I'm going to be home at 8 if, right? Because like I just said, and I might start using this at home, which is time is not my own when we're at certain things. Now, again, I think large, not venues, but large things like an NSC or trade shows. Mm-hmm. That's really out there. And to Noelle's credit, she does now get that, but I'm able to manage my time a little better when it's more of a client, flying in, going to go see 5 different clients, and then you're sort of done, right? That's pretty rigid time frame. Rarely do you go over. I mean, and if somebody wants to go have dinner with you, you sort of already know that, right? Mm-hmm. And that's still, though, I still think it's a great idea that when the dinner's over, you go home. Because if you go to the bar, my dad used to have a saying, nothing good happens after midnight, right? So
yeah, mine said the same thing.
So it's in our business, nothing good's going to happen after probably 9 o'clock, right? 9, 10 o'clock. So I would tell you, I try not to set any of those time zones or time frames at home. It's just, I'm definitely going to call you or I'm definitely going to text you. But I also know my wife goes to bed extremely early. And if I'm out here, 6:30 is 8:30 back home. So, mm-hmm. it's just sort of an understood message, mm-hmm. but at the same time, and we just go back to the human factor of business. It rolls into the home. You have to balance that, or you're not going to be happy, and then bad things start to happen.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I agree, and I think that's what's interesting about a conference is that a lot of times people are coming in for that, mm-hmm. so there's no breaks, right? Nobody really has any routine or anything like that. So then it turns into this whole thing where it ebb and flows all over the place and stuff. Whereas when like you said, when you're going in for a customer visit specifically, there is typically some routine there. And if it's on their home turf, they have families, generally speaking, mm-hmm. around that they have
Correct.
They have to be home for, and they have routine that now you're sort of embedding yourself into that, which then helps give a little bit of structure. When you're going conference world is just all bets are off. Everybody came in from everywhere, and there's two different groups of people I find in conferences. There are those that are seasoned, that have been there and are attempting to maintain a level of structure and discipline through that process, and they understand that. And then there's the newcomers, or those that don't come out a lot, and this is their one time a year where they get to just let it rip.
Yep.
And the worst part is when some of them sometimes carry a big stick, and then you're like, crap, I've got to stay around on this thing, and I've got to sort of pseudo entertain this whole process. And that's, again, I'm not saying that's wrong or anything like that, but that's where things go off the rails, I find, right? Is like that the second group that's like, let's party, let's go, no breaks. And like, I got to go home in 3 days, and I got 3 days to have a great time. And this is my once a year type of event, if you will.
And you know, and we've definitely focused on like maybe the younger generation coming in.
Yep.
One thing I would say is no is okay.
Mm-hmm.
You know, no is perfectly fine. Like if you're like, no, I need to go. I don't know, no, stick around. Come on. You know, it's like, no, seriously, I really do need to go. I got some things I need to accomplish. And then you just step away. Or, you know, so it's okay to do that. Some people I think are thinking they're going to offend that person, or maybe it's a business associate or a customer. You know, I think we're past that. There were the days where that was the case in my younger years, for sure. I think we're sort of past that. I also think that staying out all night kind of thing is shrunk substantially because we're all so busy in every facet that I look at. There's that pocket that I'm sure still does that, but at the end of the day, you know, I know from where I sit, you know, my expectation is we still have to drive business, we still have to be responsible, and you know, you're still representing the company when you're out at one of these things, and yourself. So, you know, take both of those into account. I'm not going to tell you what to do, but you know, you do have to take responsibility for yourself.
Yeah, I think that's interesting that you say that, because the representation of company, right? Even if it's after hours and you're not necessarily on the clock, you may be wearing you may be wearing your company polo or something like that right now, and there's this association of bad behavior associated with that too. And again, it's sales, we get it, it's social, right? You can have there's always some discrepancy in all of that, but I do think that that's something that how do you keep, where do you find balance in like what's fun and then what's work?
Well, I think that's
it's for everyone to decide.
That's all, I was just to say that's in the sort of the eye of the beholder, right? But I guess, and just to caveat the point you just made, I don't care if you're wearing an OEL polo or not. Not everybody. Most people that you're with are going to know who you are and who you're representing. So I don't care if you're wearing a company, anything. You're still representing the company. Sure. So I want to make that perfectly clear. And I think a lot of people would say that. But you have to just decide what's fun for you. I know this. It's too much to wake up with a hangover and go try to be on the top of my game to go represent OEL or any company. It's just tough anymore to get up and go, man. And the brain fog. You're not on it. You know, we are in the safety business, right? And what we do is we have a product that a lot of times people need guidance on. Most people know, you know, the 40 cal, 8 cal gloves. Sure. They know, but they also are going to ask some guiding questions, right? And if you're glazed over and you cannot formulate a good sentence, they're going to move down the road to where they can find a professional organization that can. So I just, that probably holds true in, you know, software. I mean, it probably holds true anywhere, but where I sit and the seat I'm in today is that's why I'm like, you can go have fun, and some people can handle more things than than others can't. So you just need to know what that boundary is for you.
Yeah, it almost feels like the hangover stories and having to be in very important meetings the next day is like a badge of honor.
Used to be.
It
used to be.
Yeah, and I do feel like the generation now doesn't have that nearly as much, but there was definitely a period early on in my career where that was the thing. It was like you share your war stories of how much you drank the night before.
And that comes from leadership.
Really?
Sure it does.
I mean, I agree with you, but yeah.
And I've had bosses that are like, no, let's go. You know, you're not going back to the room. You know, that's dying away as things go down
Why do you think that's dying away?
Well, I just think
the next generation just doesn't drink as much, or what?
I think it's maybe a little bit of that, but let's use the business we're in, right? What was it with, you know, you talk to an old time electrician, right? I don't wear my rubber insulators. I still wear just my leathers. It's a little poke, right? Why is that? Well, it's ego, right? So I think that it's a little bit of that's dying off. I think and there's ego everywhere, but it's just different. And I think the other thing too is priorities change. I think that oh, you're going to do this kind of mentality, and people would drag them away to do it. It's not that anymore. It's no, you have a business to do. I also think people are taking a lot more interest in people's personal lives, not being intervening in the personal lives per se, but like I said, oh, hey, how's the kids? Hey, how's the wife? How's the family doing? Like you get a lot more of that in business where, back in the days when I was getting started, you didn't have a whole lot of that.
Really?
It was a little more like, this is the business piece of it. Here's this. You might know who they are because I came from a small town. Everybody sort of knew everybody really. But when you got into the bigger metropolitan areas, it really wasn't that. It was like, closing, being a hawk, getting after it. And then when you were away from the office, unless people lived in like the community you lived in, you really didn't do a lot of that. Whereas, when you come to these conferences now, it's even around the community and in other, when I was in, the environmental business, we would have a lot of that. So I think it's just that community driven spirit has grown over the years. I couldn't point to you why, but it just has.
So you think that the culture around business has changed a lot over the years, and would you say it's improving then because of that?
I definitely would say it's improved immensely, for sure.
So the 90s was just wild, right?
Pretty crazy.
Really?
Yeah.
So nobody really cared about each other's
We're not going to
family.
go into those stories.
No, I'm not asking for that. But I'm just saying that it's like the 90s. I mean, we've all seen some movies and stuff, but like the 90s was just kind of buck wild, let it rip, and we're going to deal with it. And if you're hungover, no big deal. Everything's great. We're good. Whereas now it's like, do you think that people have gotten sharper and smarter because of that with some of the technology introductions and stuff too? Do you think that cell phones play a part in that? Like everybody's on camera now, so everybody's a little bit more just hesitant to that. Like, is it any of those factors?
I would go back to some of those leaders that I was expressing earlier that have sort of shaped my career. I would also talk about the group at Rockwell Automation. Mm-hmm. I think that all these people in leadership categories over the years, it's just you witness it, right? Like I say, if you're not like watching it, then it's like, well, you're not going to get it. So I just, I watch how professional those people are. Like, I would sit there and look at myself, and I was that guy. I was that guy that was like, "Ooh, we're going to go out and have a good time,"
Sure, yep.
But then all of a sudden, who knows when? But I'm just going, "Oh, these people now that I'm associated with, they don't do that." I mean, they go out and have they have a nice time, but
right.
It's not over the top anymore. It's more, well, no, I have a thing. This is a professional thing, and then you tack on the more of the community. Like so many people over the years, and again, it's very touching that people felt that way about me, to grab my hand and say, hey, why don't you come over here and let's do it this way? They never told me not to do something.
Right.
Oops, sorry. They never told me not to do something, but they were always like, well, why don't you do it this way? Or let me show you how I do it. And that leadership by example has always resonated with me. It's how I like to operate. I don't like to beat people over the head with certain things. I'd like to say, I hope you can watch what I do, and I hope I'm giving you good leadership from the way I do it. Mm-hmm. And that's where I think, for whatever reason, culturally, you just saw business leaders start to say, yeah, we're just putting that a little more in the past, and let's talk about maybe just being a little more professional. And we're not saying don't have a good time, but we are saying, just keep in mind who you are and what you're representing.
Right. So you think that, so it sounds like it's been primarily just really a big culture shift around a lot of this stuff.
I would say yes.
And a net positive too.
For sure. You still have pockets. I think they'll always exist of the, they're gonna blow it out.
They're
no
gonna do it. They're gonna do what they're gonna do. Yeah. And some of those guys are the best guys that you'll ever work with in some regard. And somehow they manage to keep it in balance. I can't keep that beach ball moving in the air. Like I just don't. I gotta go to bed. I love my sleep. I gotta get in bed. I like being showered, in bed, clean, knowing I'm not gonna be waking up at 4:00 in the morning, hot, freaking out and panting like a dog.
Right.
Like I like to have my 6, 7, 8 hours of sleep if I can get it on the road. What would you say is one of the best leadership pieces of advice that you've ever gotten? That's a big question.
That's a huge question. Show up on time is a good one.
Punctuality.
Yep. And again, I think you've heard me say this a lot. It's just what we do. It's not rocket science, right? It's just some basics in life, but definitely showing up on time. My stepdad, Glenn, who basically drilled these things into my head, which are, when I was a captain of a sports team or, whatever, he's like, you show up 15 to 20 minutes early and you're the last one to leave. He goes, I don't care how long people are there. You're the last one to leave. You're the leader. Like, you're the captain, you're the leader. That going way back to my youth has always stuck with me. And then lead by example. There was an individual that said, people are going to watch you. They're going to want to see how you do it. And so, I think I was very, very blessed to be in a lot of leadership roles in my very younger years. And then I had a person guiding me, whether I wanted to listen to him or not is a different story. But I did. And it's paid off later in life. So, be early, be on time, and then, look somebody in the eye when you're talking to them.
Yep.
Have a good firm handshake.
Yeah.
Again, these aren't like some epiphany, right? I mean, we hear this a lot, but those are true. Those are things I look for when I'm talking to people, or if I'm meeting somebody for the first time, or if I have new people. Are they on time for things, or are they not on time for things? And I don't say anything, but I register it. Yeah,
it's that ready to do business mentality a little bit. You're like,
life. I mean, I don't care if if you're supposed to meet a friend, be on time. You should respect somebody enough to say, hey, I'm gonna be there when I say I'm gonna be there.
Right.
Things do happen, traffic happen. I get that, but at the end of the day, these are genuine things that is it business focused a little bit, but it's also just life focused as well.
Yeah, it shows them that you respect their time.
Certainly.
And you appreciate the opportunity that they're giving you just to even have some of their time.
You're meeting somebody for the first time and they show up an hour late. What are you thinking?
I'm pissed.
You're not saying nothing, but you're like, what the?
Yeah. Yeah. No, I'm mad.
And then if they come in and they're like, woo, and you're just like, really? Really?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Well, especially if it's the first time.
Correct.
Time, I have if I'm going to go out of my way to give you time, and again, I'll use this as a business scenario. I'm not going to even talk about it from like a social standpoint, because I can allow for that if I know you. But it's the first time I've met you, and I am, giving you an opportunity to potentially sell me something that you offer, that maybe I already have something in my system or something, whether it's a product or a software or something else, and you're going to be both late, unprofessional, soft handshake, whatever, not look me in the eyes. I have no confidence. I have zero confidence in you at that point. And I think that's something that's why I kind of started with like this sort of work from home thing, because I feel like there's so much of a lost social interpersonal communication types of things that are happening in the world. And I think that there's a recession back now to some of that stuff that was like, no, we want you interfacing. We want you there. We want you building culture. But when you build that culture, here's point 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 that you need to do, right? Some of these things that you laid out, which was look them in the eyes, firm handshake, know these things about yourself, be on time, be punctual, and be prepared for that meeting. I think all those things are essential to today. And I do think that it's what you've done really well, I think, is you've helped build a lot of that culture at OEL. Not that we didn't have that necessarily, but when you're running too frantically and that whole departmentalizing things and stuff like that, that can get lost in translation if there's not somebody at the top of that thing, or the right driver in that car that can really push, or that can really move that thing around.
You hit on something there I want to back up to, which was earlier when we were talking about like this move to get people back into companies, and well, why is that? And if you listen to the talking heads on TV, it was because, like I said, we got a ton of real estate and we just want to occupy the real estate. Well, in a smaller company, in my opinion, is you need to get inside, because we were working with these people all day long, and you exchange emails and you might have a phone call or whatever. But again, that personal interaction just with the people that you work with, and so they get to know you. Some people you don't like, some people you like a lot. I mean, that's the part of being in a larger community. But at the end of the day, I also think that's part of it too. I do not know if corporate America is looking at it that way, but I know how I look at it. And I'm just like when I come into town, I'm not here often. I always try to make it into the office so that I can at least say hello to everybody.
Right.
Say, have a brief discussion, but at the end of the day, it's still that personal connection.
Mm-hmm. And the feedback I always get whenever you're in the office from the front office people is, that was awesome that Michael came in, that we really appreciated him coming in and seeing us, shaking our hand, looking us in the eye, telling us how much you appreciate the work that they do on a day-to-day front. And I think that is something that leadership has a really good opportunity to, even just at the smallest level, do those types of actions, and it makes such an enormous impact and effect on culture.
Do not take people for granted. Everyone's doing a job, and it's like a sports team. You can't have a football team without a line, even though everybody likes to praise a quarterback or a running back or a wide receiver. But you cannot do it without the line, right? Same thing in any organization. First of all, especially smaller organizations, you have to go along the fact that we hire good people, sort of the same culture and sort of a little bit of the same mindset, whatever. But there's still people trying to do a job. And I don't care where you're at in the organization. You cannot have an organization if you don't have everybody pulling in the same direction. And there's tons of memes out there. You can pull it up, the little, what is it, like the Greek people that are, pulling the boats along or whatever. You got to go in the same direction. And if you don't have that, and somebody's over here just doing whatever they want, doesn't work. So yes, I firmly believe in you show the people the respect they deserve. You thank them and show them appreciation if they've done, certainly if they're doing jobs for you, which they are. That's just how we keep moving things forward, right? And when we get to these little caveats where we find people that aren't, then let's have a discussion. What's going on? Because 3 months ago everything was great. And now all of a sudden things are sort of gone off the rails. What's happening? Right. So yeah, I believe that we should be making sure that we show appreciation every day to the people who are helping us do what we do.
Yeah, no, I totally agree with you, and I appreciate so much of that leadership from you. And I think that that's been modeled to the younger guys as well. We
have a young crew.
We do. We have well, and that was what was interesting about like building it and stuff, was like we had, and I look at it similarly to a sports team, and I always use the San Antonio Spurs as kind of my benchmark for what a successful team really looks like, because I thought what they did was, as they had seasoned players, and then they would be drafting their younger talent, they would consciously go out and look for more of that seasoned player and stuff that they knew that they could put that younger player under, and you could watch them really develop, and they could hold in the retention rate for players in their early career to their twilights was exceptionally high. People wanted to stay in that organization because of that culture that they built, almost no matter where they were at in their timeline of their career. And I think that was really something that was exceptional to me as a fan to watch, and knowing that was one of those things where they could keep Tim Duncan on the roster, and he understood as he matured through his career how his role continued to change, because they built a great culture around what it meant to be part of that organization.
Sure.
And RC Buford deserves an enormous amount of credit. Greg Popovich too, like for just the work that they did, and they created a dynasty because of it. All right, last question, because we're almost out of time. Ohio State.
Oh boy.
Currently ranked number 1.
Yes.
How do you feel about that?
Well,
Jay's an Oregon Duck fan.
I know that. Hey, listen, go Big Ten. I'm a Big Ten guy first, right? You listen. I have all the respect in the world.
I think the Ducks are coming. I think the Ducks are coming, dude. It's scary.
So
man. Penn State's crap. I think they're completely overrated.
So number 1, first of all, I think there's a large volume of play that needs to happen before I will sit here and tell you I'm an advocate of. I think that polls come out way too soon.
Oh, it's ridiculous.
Right. I mean, now I will say this: we did play a really, really good Texas team.
No, you didn't.
Okay. I would argue. Let's see where they finish. Number 1, I know you're an A&M guy. I get it, but I don't trust. I mean, there's nothing in this poll other than we're number one right now today. And I think you hear this echoed from our coaching staff, which is you're only as good as the next game you play. So I think that it's great to be number one for sure, but I don't sit out there and beat my chest. Let's where do we end up at the end of the year?
You guys are comfortable with the target on your back. You
Love
guys
it.
sit at number one nonstop, so it's annoying for the rest of us. But I don't hate Ohio State. I like Ohio State. I like Oregon. There's a lot of Big Ten schools I don't like. I think Penn State is wickedly overrated all the time. I don't know why people think they're so good. I don't know why the polls think they're so good. But
Clyde, don't listen to him, Clyde.
I don't care. But I think it's going to come down. Big Ten is going to be Oregon and Ohio State. I think that's the clash of the Titans.
I think that'd be a great game.
That's going to be a great game.
Well, do we play you guys? I don't think so.
Yeah,
No.
in the Big Ten championship.
Well, we got Penn State, we got Illinois. That's on our schedule. Michigan will always be tough with us. I mean, a rival game is always tough. I don't care if somebody's 0-15. That rival game is always going to be tough. So again, I think that if we can run the table and get to the championship game against Oregon and they run the table, that's a great football game for people to see. And then it's like, let's just see, let's put the pads on and let's go play.
All right, so you guys win or not? You guys getting a natty this year or not?
Man, repeat? Boy, that's so hard. Do we make the playoffs? We make the playoffs.
There's nobody.
That's all I'll say.
Here's the thing.
We make the playoffs.
Well, I think the Big Ten is going to win the national championship this year. I think that the SEC has got so much weirdness in it right now. I think A&M makes the playoffs. I think A&M's in there, and I think they could go potentially deep. But whoever comes out of the SEC is not coming into the pedigree of the Big Ten between Ohio State or Oregon, whoever comes out on top there.
You still got to go play the games. I mean, in college, you're still talking about young individuals playing a high end sport. Do I think we're going to be very competitive? Yes. Do we make the playoffs? I think we do. After that, let's see what happens. I mean, I'm not making any predictions on national championship again. That's just so hard to do these days.
I predicted you guys to win it last year.
A lot of people did. I was very skeptical. I really was. And then as each game ticked along, the Tennessee game and stuff, it's like all of a sudden that team was just gelling. I'm going, it's going to be hard to beat us.
Will Howard
was
nasty.
Him and just how they offered the
Henderson. They just freaking dialed it up.
I didn't see that coming. I didn't see us do what we did to those teams.
Clicked right when the playoffs started. It was like, and they are completely full force, full throttle. No one is going to beat these guys.
Yeah. It was fun. It was a fun run. They always are fun runs. That's for sure. Championship runs they're just fun to go on.
Michael Dresser, thank you so much for your time.
Thanks, Ace. Appreciate it.